guys, it's Nina from VRFocus. We are here at Open Docs Fest and I'm here with...
William Uricchio.
So tell me who you are, what you do, and what you are going to speak about today.
So I'm a professor to begin with, and I teach at MIT in a program called Comparative Media Studies. And I have a lab there, a research lab called the MIT Open Documentary Lab. And basically what it does is look at new technologies, new forms of expression, and tries to understand what that can bring to the documentary mission, how that can help us both see the world, articulate it, communicate it in different ways than we've been doing.
And you've been with virtual reality from the very beginning.
Well, I don't know about the very beginning, but I've certainly in the 90s, early 90s, I was active with it. And because I'm a historian, I've really been looking at earlier instantiations of what would probably in its day have been called VR, had Linear branded it that early. So things like the panorama in the late 18th century, or things like stereoscopy, or, I mean, there's myriad technological endeavors to make people feel as if they're somewhere. That keeps going on. So I'm fascinated by that. I'm fascinated by our notion of immersion that's become so important now, or presence, you know, these two kind of slightly different sensations. But you can find claims in literature through the ages, even early film, where those conditions are present. So I'm intrigued by that, and see those as, in a way, both precursors for our current state of VR, but also indications that the story is going to keep unfolding. We haven't hit the end.
With new technologies, of course.
With new technologies, yeah.
So what are the courses that you teach? What are the sort of the topics that you touch upon? And what are people most interested in when they come to your course? What are they asking?
Well, I taught a VR course last semester, and people were asking like what it is and how do I get in it. I think there's quite a bit of hype right now, and people are interested to see how they can understand what VR is, what it is a bit murky because we mean quite different things technologically. We mean quite different things even in terms of gear. So what is it exactly? And people are eager to sort of figure out how they can shackle that to their own projects. So whether it's immersive theater or whether it's social change or whether, you know, whatever, they're trying to find out what that is. And so we had a lot of people. Sandra Rodriguez, who's a PhD in sociology, youth culture, but also a producer of VR in Montreal. She and I taught the course together, and I think the applicants to the course, and there were several hundred applicants for the 16 places we had, really came with, I think, that basic thing. What is it? How can I put it to work for my agenda?
Do you see it as a completely new medium that can work in lots of different categories? The way that, you know, a lot of people I ask this question about virtual reality, they say, it can be used in so many different applications, for medical, for health, for telling stories. Where do you see the future going? And especially with new technologies like augmented reality and mixed reality, how do you see the future of VR?
So to answer your last question first, in terms of the broader spectrum of realities, I think my money is on augmented reality. I think augmented reality has a couple of advantages. First of all, it's an inherently social medium. We are in the world at the same time we're in the image space or the sound space. B, it's something where participation by people, having people produce their own content is trivial. It's trivially easy. Whereas for VR, that's not the case. VR still is a fairly fussy, it's a finicky medium. I mean, AR, technologically speaking, is also a little finicky. It depends a bit what you mean. In terms of appending sound assets to location, that's a kind of augmented reality, and that's quite easy to do. It doesn't take any goggles. Is a fantastic way to explore spaces and cities in particular. So where VR is in a tougher space because it's up against our inclination to quickly grow accustomed to illusion. We quickly grow accustomed and then start to see what parts don't exactly work. So within a year or two, people who have a lot of exposure, and I mean makers know this better than anyone, are starting to look at the cracks, the seams, the bits that didn't work, not looking at the wow effect. That ceases to happen. They probably write that off as professionalism, but it happens to audiences as well. And we've seen this happen again and again and again. Panorama, all the technologies I mentioned. So I think we're doomed to repeat that with VR. And I think we're doomed to repeat it because every night we enter a VR world. We shut our eyes, we're closed off from the world around us, and weird stuff happens. And we're in worlds where we're safe. I mean, nothing ultimately really happens to us, but and I don't know what other people's visuals are like, but if mine are like anyone else's, it's pretty fantastic, and it's absolutely real. And so how do you step from that world daily into a world of a kind of box that you strap on your head and deal with resolution issues and whatever? So whereas AR, because it's overlays on the world, the resolution, of course, is an issue, but maybe not the core issue. It's about the information overlay, the added value to experience around us.
For me, in the future, I kind of see it like Black Mirror, in the sense that it could just be contact lenses in the future, and then I can choose to see augmented reality or virtual reality, depending on what I want to go into. One of the things about filmmakers that they find so important with 360 filmmaking and virtual reality is that you can box off the rest of the world and you do truly feel immersed. Speaking to or having listened to a lot of the people today, that was one of the benefits of virtual reality. That's, when they're trying to pitch to a client or say, why do you want to make a project in virtual reality? It would be because I want to put them in a space that they otherwise couldn't be. Do you think that those are like the positive notes of VR?
Oh, sure. I mean, those are certainly the positive notes. And as long as duration is not an issue, as long as you can keep it, 8 to 20 minutes or whatever, it's just fine. But I think we're missing, let me just give you a number. WhatsApp, 2014, WhatsApp is sold and the Washington Post is sold. Jeff Bezos buys the Post, Facebook buys WhatsApp. The Post sold for, the whole package was $250 million. The Post's part of that big package that included television assets and education assets, whatever. The Post part of it was around $60 million. WhatsApp was $19 billion. WhatsApp it's not content, it's connection. The Post is fantastic content, and we can debate the connection. That tells me that the biggest driver we have today in our world is connectivity, is having people connect with one another. And while there are advantages to being able to close us off from the world for 8 minutes or 20 minutes and let us immerse in something, an asset that cinema understands, an asset that television understands, there is also something amazing to be said about connectivity. So I'm curious about what's going to happen in terms of social VR. And right now, the prototypes I've seen at least tend to look a lot like Second Life, rebooted. That is to say, some interesting potentials, but a lot of liabilities. But I think that's really crucial, and I think that's where AR has a natural advantage. It enables us to connect, enables us to actually see those connections in a visible way. So, those numbers are dramatic numbers. If I were to do a data viz, they would even be more shocking. 60 million of a chunk of 19 billion is literally a pencil stripe. It's nothing. To the extent that economics reflects human value systems, that tells me something that VR has got to address, or it's going to have some problems down the road.
Working at MIT and sort of teaching all of the latest immersive technologies, what are you most excited about the developments around the world? Is there a specific company or specific project or something that you're most interested in, like, I don't know, the scanning or haptics? For immersive technologies, what do you see as something that could be the next step?
I'm going to give you an answer you don't want.
That's fine.
It's looking at often the underdeveloped world's use of our technologies, looking at how the phone is put to use in rural Kenya or Zambia or Peru. Those people find ways of making that thing do stuff that we just didn't imagine. They're doing their financing, they're circumventing payment systems by elaborate callback systems, whatever. It's amazing. Those, it's effectively a kind of hacking of the technology, but through that hacking, it enables us to see incredibly interesting applications that never dawned on us. We're creatures of habit. We're kind of facing in one direction, and we see what's in that direction. So I really I learn a lot by looking at the hacks in the world, and especially the hacks that come from people who don't really have all the goods. I mean, it's funny, and I have a colleague who works on television in Zambia, out back in rural Zambia, and well, there's television, but not much, and they don't even like the big screen because it's an electricity hog. They're working on solar mostly. These are places off the grid. So those big things represent actually an incredible liability. Who would want that? Of course they want the small screen. So it helps me anyway to kind of rethink our relationship to technology and what the potentials, sometimes hidden potentials of technologies are. So of course, you know, at a place like MIT and other cutting edge technological universities, myriad crazy things are happening all the time, and that's great. That keeps the brain cells moving. But I think the real action is in watching how everyday people hack this stuff and what they do with it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Is there a sort of a website where we can see your projects or your works?
Sure. A couple I would point to. One is a kind of an online archive we have called DocuBase, and that's http docubase.mit.edu. A couple of hundred of interactive and immersive and VR myriad kinds of innovative documentary forms are there, and they're all there. You can link right to them. Another that people might find interesting is a site called momentsofinnovation.mit.edu. So moments of innovation written as one word. And that really looks at the deep history of technology. So if you take a concept like immersion or a concept like remix, those have technological manifestations, cultural manifestations that go back thousands of years. And that's what this thing tries to do. Put those things that are deep in history in conversation with stuff that's happening today. Interactivity, immersion, remix, none of this stuff is new. We just tend to forget. We tend to kind of fixate on the next big thing, and we kind of forget what's behind us. And I think we can learn a lot through that.
Wow, what an ending. Well, thank you so much
Well,
for
thank
this
you.
interview. And if you're interested in learning more about different realities, please head over to vrfocus.com, and I will see you there.